This is My First Job in Sports, the show created to kickstart your journey toward a successful career in the sports industry. Presented by SBRnet, your comprehensive source for data focused on sports fans and more. Here's your host of My First Job in Sports, Neil Schwartz.
I find sometimes when I make words up and, butcher the English language, it's,
it's satisfying.
It's very Neil. To know me, as my wife would say, to know Neil is to love Neil. So no question about that. Hey, welcome to episode number 30 of My First Job in Sports. I'm, of course, Neil Schwartz, the host for all 30 episodes. And I'm with Dr. Ashley Gardner from Temple University. Dr. G, welcome to episode 30.
Woo! I'm so excited. Great job, Neil.
I'm a little upset with myself. I didn't go out and get myself a cake or anything, but I do have an anniversary show bagel.
Wow.
So with a cake, does that count? Is that okay, Dr. G?
That's incredible. That's incredible.
It's the anniversary bagel.
I love that, Neil. So creative.
Yeah, well, I had to do something to celebrate our 30th show. I mean, I have to say, it's really a wonderful experience meeting a lot of these young people, that are going to be coming into the world of sports. Dr. G, you meet them, you're with them every day.
Yeah.
What do you find, just out of curiosity?
What do I find in my students? My students, they're incredible. They're curious. They're open. They're willing. They're, like I said, an open book. And so this podcast is so needed because these are the things that they want to know, and they will listen and they will take it. They will use it, at least my students. And so I'm so grateful for this podcast. And I know students are too.
Well, the one thing that we always pride ourselves is that we are a source of information, education, motivation, inspiration, navigation. I mean, we really want to try to provide the framework that students can use to help them get that all-important first job. And it's been a wonderful experience, for the first 30 episodes. And my first job in sports was actually the seed for the Get in the Game event, which right behind me there somewhere. And that's actually where I met Dr. G, was at the Get in the Game event. She came down, she was on a panel, and she did an amazing job. And we just kind of clicked.
Rest is history.
The rest is history. We're now up to show number 30 and all that. Hey, let's talk for a couple minutes about last night's March Madness. And of course, congratulate University of Florida Gators for winning the national championship. Any takeaways from March Madness from you?
Yeah, shout out to your Florida Gators. I know you were very excited to see your Florida Gators win, even though I was kind of rooting for Houston, but it was a great game. You couldn't have asked for a better championship game, maybe a better last shot, but you couldn't ask for a better championship game. So that was great. And then also, let's talk about the women's side as well. The women's March Madness was absolutely incredible. The last game was absolutely a steal away. I mean, they ran away with it. It was a blowout, but I appreciated the tournament holistically. And clearly UConn was just the most dominant team of that side. So it was a great March Madness, I think. And especially I'm excited to see what your data says, because I feel like the women's side took a lot of that viewership. And so I really want to kind of do that compare contrast.
Our data does show that women's sports, in particular women's basketball, college, and of course the WNBA, are really growing, and are really making their mark. And it's not, and it's not just somebody anecdotally saying it, it's real. Mm-hmm. And it's backed up by data. It's backed up by the data that I, do every year. We do a large study, about 7,000 people, focusing on fandom and the growth, the opportunity. What's happening with women's sports is 100% real. So if you're a brand, you're an advertiser, you're somebody that's looking, you want to make your mark in sports, maybe you can't afford to buy the Philadelphia Eagles, the Phillies, or, a professional team. Look at women's sports. Women's sports represents a wonderful opportunity. Hey, so let's get to our guest, Annie Borovskiy. Annie is a recent graduate, actually, of High Point University, but more important, she's also been working for the Brooklyn Nets and BSE Global. I know, a great organization. I think they also own the New York Liberty, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
I love to give you a little bit about your background, but you know what? Why don't you give me your background?
Awesome. Well, it's awesome to be here. Thank you so much, Neil and Dr.
Our pleasure.
G. I am formerly an inside sales rep from BSE Global and the Brooklyn Nets, as well as the New York Liberty. It was my first job in sports right out of college, and touch a little bit on that. I think that's, the bulk of a lot of the why and the how. Proud graduate of the class of 2024 of High Point University down in North Carolina, where I graduated with a degree in sport management. I'm sure we'll get into the nitty and gritties of how I landed on that, but a little bit about me, just graduate from High Point University, got to really explore and live that New York City dream working for such a great organization. And here we are.
Yeah, coincidentally, Annie actually went to school and grew up not too far from where I grew up outside of Philadelphia. Annie's from Langhorne, right? Did I get that right?
Right.
Used to be a great ice cream place out there. I forgot what it was called. And I grew up in an area called Cheltenham, which is a northwestern suburb of Philadelphia. I went to Cheltenham High School. And of course, our most famous graduate, I guess, would be Reggie Jackson. You heard of him, right, Dr. G?
Of course.
Mr. October?
Of course. Of
Okay,
course.
I was just, I thought maybe it was flexing my baby boomer muscles a little bit.
And then one thing that he didn't mention is that, I work at Temple University, right? Also in the heart of North Philadelphia, or as my students would say, North Philly. And my students, they oftentimes, first and foremost, I don't think he mentioned, 5 out of the last 6 of our guests were women. And in the classroom at Temple University, I'm seeing more and more women come into the classroom. And so from your perspective, Annie, what do you think is drawing more and more women to sport?
Yeah, I love that question. And I love that you are seeing more women in the classroom and on the podcast. I think that's true in my experience as well, not only going to High Point, seeing, maybe that ratio of boys to girls in the classroom. But I think it's really important to just have really good role models and trailblazers within the industry. To be pretty frank, I had no idea where I wanted to be, what I wanted to do. I had a million and one ideas of what I wanted to be when I grew up. And it wasn't until I found a mentor within my high school. She's kind of I call her a triple header. She was my advisor for both like academic and social kind of like categories in high school, but she also happened to be my field hockey coach, and she was also our girls athletic director. She is now retired. Her name's Nancy Bernardini, but I kind of just looked up to her, and it wasn't until like my junior year of high school I was like, hey, Nancy, what did you do? How did you get here? Like, what is it that you did to get to this point in your life? And she's the one that kind of taught me about the degree in sport management, or going with like a business administration degree with a sport concentration, which is kind of where, again, that inspiration came from, but also seeing, the seniors and the juniors when I was in school and seeing the girls get the internships. And I know Alana Sullivan was on this podcast, but she was. Like a trailblazer for me. And just having really good examples. And I tried to be that example in the classroom, but I really just think the knowledge of like that sport is a business. People are just starting to hear that more, whether it be through social media or just with the trends of kids naturally falling into sports. It's a dream for, I think, most. So I think that's just why a lot more people and a lot more girls are into it, and getting the confidence from others, I think is a big driving factor these days.
Annie, what attracted you to sports? Just if you had to, put a little sentence towards it, or a couple sentences.
Grew up playing almost everything under the sun. Started with tennis, a little bit more individualized. And then as I got older, got more exposed to field hockey, softball, basketball, and just the team sport aspect, anything from coaching to administration, anything and anything interests me.
I love that, Annie. I do. So I want to back up to, like you said, you had that mentor who kind of helped guide you.
Yes.
And number one, how do you effectively find a mentor?
Great question. I think it's really important to kind of know, like, I am someone that always likes to have like goals in mind, and I want to, be like a big thing that Dr. Cobain at High Point University talks about before he even stepped foot on campus is kind of the idea of like typically people are the product of the 5 people they surround themselves the most with.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I have seen that a lot just post-college, throughout my college time. I think the kind of like that puzzle piece of getting ahead is trying to, follow an example that someone you aspire to be, get their thought process behind it, just get to pick their brain. For students at High Point University at the time, when I saw them getting to go to visit the headquarters of the Dallas Mavericks, I was like, I want to be that kid that gets to have those experiences. And I think that really starts with the relationships you form and just your first impression. So I think having a really strong first impression of yourself and also doing the research on the back end, I think is really helpful to know about someone. And then it's as easy as just going for it, asking to pick their brain for 10 to 15 minutes over lunch or coffee, or setting up a Zoom call, or like a, virtual interview or informational interview. I know that was a big push at school, and trying just to take that initiative to do it more than just for like a classroom assignment, if that kind of makes sense.
Definitely.
And you've mentioned and referenced your university, your illustrious university, several times throughout this conversation. So can you talk to us about your experience as a sport management major at your university? Internships, volunteerships, classroom, you can make it as broad or as narrow as you'd like.
Awesome. Yeah, I could probably talk on an hour just for that question. But yeah, I am just so grateful and blessed to have chosen to go to High Point, chosen the sport management program. When it was coming down to the college search, I primarily was looking at schools around like North Carolina and South Carolina, because for whatever reason, I wanted to pack up and leave Philly.
Nice weather too. Weather doesn't stink.
Yeah, the weather was beautiful. And ultimately, this might sound kind of shocking. I was like not all for High Point because my mom wanted me to go there so bad. But obviously you see the gorgeous facilities and the gorgeous campus, but it really, you guys have probably heard this multiple times, it doesn't quite outdo the people that you meet there.
Sure.
So just getting the hands-on time with my soon-to-be professors, with the current students, just hearing about what they did drew me to it. And as soon as I stepped onto campus, so fall of 2020, we were in school, on campus, in masks, social distancing, all of that. But I really loved having the opportunity to be on campus. And I knew that there might not be going around the world, but I still knew that I could have an impact. So early on, I just really, even though I wasn't taking many sport classes, I still wanted time on my professors' calendars. I volunteered at our open houses to just talk about sport management. And I didn't even know what I was getting myself into, but I believed in the program so much that I, was trying to sell it. I think that was my first real sales experience, which is volunteering for those open houses. And High Point University has a great relationship with Wake Forest,
yes.
And Learfield IMG. Having a lot of property assistance from our sport management program. So I was able to do that for 3 years from my sophomore to senior year. And again, that really stemmed from the relationships I had with some of our juniors and seniors, like Alana. They were able to really take us under the wing. And I was able to bring students on board there, where we were able to work with all of our partners, signage, just game day, operations type of things for their football and men's basketball program. And I know that game day assistant role has been growing exponentially. So I'm really excited to see where that takes off. Outside of that, I also got to get a little taste of analytics.
Sure.
I worked for Carolina University as well, a small school in Winston-Salem, not to be confused with the University of North Carolina.
Heard of them.
But I got to work with their baseball and softball teams on more of an analytics side.
Sure.
Big stats, working with numbers, just because I had so many interests in the classroom from, the finance perspective, and we got to work on a really cool project through SBRnet. So I knew that these case studies and these projects were something that I was really passionate about, where Dr. Tim Koba was able to leverage, obviously, his network and his connection to bring that into the classroom. And ultimately, more so like sophomore, junior, and senior year, we got really involved with case study competitions. So I got to travel down to University of South Carolina, the Sport Marketing Association conference down. I think it was in Florida that year, but the opportunities were abundant. I was also pretty heavily involved like on campus within student organizations. So I think just having the wholesome experience of doing a lot on campus, off campus, and in the classroom was my happy mix of everything I could have ever wanted.
Well, I do appreciate the plug for SBRnet. I'm not going to lie. And also, Dr. Tim Koba or Dr. Tim. I don't know how I got calling everybody Dr. G, Dr. Tim, but it's just, I guess, a more look. It's a sign of respect for me. I'm not a doctor, but I am someone that's been in the industry a long time. I did enjoy, and I do continue to enjoy when I get invited into Professor Koba's classes and get to talk to students and work with students and, work on projects and case studies and things like that. I find that to be incredibly rewarding. Hey, talk a little bit about the internship that you had at Wake Forest and maybe how that allowed you to leapfrog to your job at the Brooklyn Nets and BSE Global.
Yeah, absolutely. So starting off, that interview process kind of ran during the end of my freshman year in the spring. So at the time, the coordinator of partnerships for Wake Forest Sports Properties is, looking to hire excited kids, especially kids from High Point, and kind of coming into August, as soon as Wake has their first home game. The game day responsibilities really vary from game to game, as a lot of people might imagine.
Yes, it does.
And it at first was more of a role where it was like, hey, show up on the days that we have football games and basketball games, and you're going to run Daktronics and our LED board signs. This is the minute that, these LEDs need to be displayed and visualized. Here you go. Have fun with that. Proof of performance pictures, obviously making sure that we're reporting all of that to the partners and sponsors, making sure that they're getting what they paid for.
Sure. No, sure. It's important. Very
important. Super, super important to do the work on the back end. But I just got pretty routine in that. Like I showed up on the game days, did my role, and kind of packed up and left for the day. And I had a really, really great relationship with our coordinator at the time, Danny. He's over at NC State now, actually. But I kind of just told him hey, Danny, what do you need? Do you need help doing stuff in the office? Do you need help before a game day? Do you need me to stay a little after? And I think just him seeing that motivation and that fire for more.
Employers love that.
Yeah.
They love that.
Yeah.
I love that. When one of my analysts calls me and says, hey, I'm done with that project you just gave me. What do you got now? Or what can I help you with now? I love that.
Yeah. And I think just being obviously in college,
sure,
you have way more free time than what you might think. I'm someone that I don't like having free time. I love my free time. I'm a big nap girl, but
me too.
Me three.
In that setting, you kind of want to do whatever you can to make yourself be different. And I think he appreciated that, and we were able to kind of get me to actually go down to the Learfield office, in Winston, get to go there just on a, whatever schedule worked good for me Monday through Friday, and really see more of behind the scenes of all the Excel sheets that they're working on, and hear about what partners they're talking with, and really seeing their day to day rather than just being helpful on a game day, which is still super important.
Of course.
But yeah, football, lots of different activations. I think one of my favorite activations was our StubHub seat of the game. We were able to, to take 2 fans, upgrade their seats, and just seeing that reaction and excitement from fans, I think is something that was a first for me, outside of just being a fan myself. And then for basketball game days, pretty similar. Anything from dropping parachutes from the catwalk to the LED signage that I talked about. A little bit of anything and everything. And that was my first real understanding that there is a business side of sport and in that real world experience.
And continuing to talk about your undergraduate experience, which courses do you think really helped you when you entered the industry, specifically in your first job in sports?
Yeah, absolutely. So I will give my kudos to this class day in and day out. And Neil, you had something to do with this class. There was definitely some other people in the industry
love hearing that.
definitely helped with our class. But one of our like higher level 4,000 level classes is called Strategic Management of Sport Organizations. So that's typically a class that you take like your junior or senior year. And I think just the way that which our professors do have like real industry connections, we're able to actually do real case studies for them. I think that class and just what was taught in terms of the actual strategic planning of things, and that just because someone purchases something doesn't mean that that's how it's going to play out and that's how it's going to go. So one of my big takeaways from that class, as well as like sport finance, I have never once taken a finance class and can now say I know how to, read those sheets, whatever
balance
they
sheet,
called.
sure, absolutely.
Yes. Like that's something that has translated over to the corporate life where we're doing, millions and millions of dollars of budgeting and
It's just more zeros.
Exactly.
That's all it is. It's just more zeros.
Our EVP and our like VP of ticketing is going over the budget and where we're at and what the projections are. So actually getting to look up at that screen and understand what's going on, I think is really important. But then just the real world projects. We got to work with Megan Kolak, who was the VP of, why am I blanking? I'm blanking. It'll come to me, but we got to basically pitch a theme night.
Oh, wow.
And the Greenville Triumph. It was a project that was assigned to us over like Thanksgiving, and I was so excited to work on it. We ultimately ended up pitching a Shrek theme night, and everything from like the activations before with a petting zoo with donkeys and cats, to the giveaways, and really just understanding like this is what people are doing for work. But then also on my side, like having the ticket sales experience,
sure.
Ultimately like learning how to put butts in seats, I think is something that definitely transferred over. And I was able to learn so much about what that obviously actually looks like I love that expression of butts in seats. But lots and lots of stuff from the classroom definitely translated. Even our introduction to sport management class, that's typically a class you take first semester, second semester, and really just opens up your eyes about the legal side of sport, finance, marketing, sales, sponsorships. There's anything and everything under the sun. I think that was also really helpful because, again, I've just had so many different ideas in my head of what I wanted to do. But I love the structure of the courses, and I love that we got that hands-on experience with it as well.
And as an instructor, I absolutely love intro to sports management courses because we get to introduce the breadth and depth of the sport industry. And so I'm glad that was one of your favorites. And so I want to go back to something that Neil really loved that you said, which was getting butts in seats, because that essentially is your role at BSE Global and the
Sure.
Brooklyn Nets. And so before we ask you specifically about that role, was sales the goal? Like, so for example, we go on Teamwork Online, we go on these job boards, and we see a bunch of sales jobs. Was sales for you the goal, or was it like, okay, this is a foot in the door, as a lot of my students tend to think?
Yeah, that is a great question. So with me, like I had never had like an authentic sales role, sales internship. I did work retail sales at Dick's Sporting Goods, which I argue is a great job.
So do I. I think it's a great place to start.
It was awesome. I loved it. But I had never had that, like authentic sales internship or experience in college. But I do think just what I was hearing from Tinkoba, from all my professors, from just family and friends and people that I was able to work with along my time in college, they would kind of tell me like, hey, you're a sales girl. Like you've got the personality for it. You can talk to a wall. I'm like, yes, I can. But
yeah, me too.
I just don't think I was really exposed to it as much. I think obviously, looking at Teamwork Online, you do see a lot of sales roles. And I don't want to say like I was opposed to sales, but definitely it was a great foot in the door. I'm so glad that at BSE, like, yes, you're on the sales floor, but we're a parent company of an NBA team, the Arena, a WNBA team. We're acquiring magazines and so much more within like the fashion, music, entertainment space, where we were able to walk over and we met with different departments, innovation, graphic design. Like I talked to email marketing people. I never thought I'd have an interest in that, but I definitely do think it was a great foot in the door, but I'm glad that it was still like the passion that I had, but it also worked with the skills that I had, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah. And can you continue to hone in on your day-to-day as an inside sales rep? Because like you said, you were here, you were there, all these parent companies. On average, what did the day look like? Because again, students are going to see sales, executive sales rep all over the place. But for you, what did that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So where do we start here?
I'm sorry.
Start at A and then work your way to Z, or start at 1 and work your way to 12.
So our about first 2.5 weeks, I started back in June. So I graduated about less than a month later, made the move to New York City. Our first 2.5 weeks were pretty strictly just onboarding and training. So familiarizing ourselves with just the company, the mission, the values, really understanding the people that work in our company, our ownership group, our owners, obviously leaders on the sales floor and leaders throughout the company. I think that was really important information. And it's awesome because it's really like a family. Just because I was an inside sales rep didn't mean that we couldn't talk to, C-level executives, which I thought was really interesting. But after training was done, obviously we hit the phones. And for those of you that might not know, like inside sales reps are kind of like a utility player, I kind of want to say, just based off of the programs that I have heard across a bunch of different sports. But it was really cool. We got to sell full menu, which basically meant we had the ability to sell a courtside seat, a suite, nosebleed seats for concerts for the Liberty and the Brooklyn Nets. But on average, like just talk a little bit about like daily expectations. It's 100 calls a day, 50 texts a day, 50 emails. And then we basically book appointments. So with sales, with sports, we try to get our clients as face-to-face as possible. In terms of what we're selling, it's anything from season ticket members. We have group outings. So if I know in like our group sales department, anything from youth groups, schools, really, really big into just the like Brooklyn basketball community. I think that's one of our really important, or one of BSE's really important pillars that they got to work on. So when we weren't calling and texting and keeping up with our clients, they also did a great job of getting us access to different C-level executives, getting time on their calendars, having one-on-ones with our managers, with other leaders. So every day looked a little different. I know people don't always like that answer.
I mean, I've been in sales a long time. I mean, and I kind of get the drill, believe me. And it's a numbers game. But was it a little bit intimidating the first time they told you had to make 100 calls, 100, a day, and 50 texts and all that? Was it a little intimidating, Annie?
Yeah. So
and how'd you overcome it?
Yeah. It was really awesome. So our inside sales class, there was 17 of us that all came in to start on the same day. So all recent college or grad school graduates, and we would have weekly Zoom meetings leading up to our first day of work, where it was Q&A time. They would, expose us to different people on the floor and different reps on the floor. I think having that time to really just lay out expectations and kind of like humble us into it a little bit, if you want to say it.
It's a humbling experience. You make 100 calls and you get 99 no's. It's a humbling experience, but you did get one yes. So, do another 100 tomorrow.
Really, really interesting. Like our managers did such a good job of showing us those facts and that evidence. And obviously the training and development purpose is there for a reason. And we have actually our own training development specialist, Adam Vogel, who's kind of like our in-house trainer, which is really, really different than most teams. And that was definitely very attractive to me. But yeah, definitely 100 calls is no easy feat.
Nope.
some days you come in and people in New York are in the best mood ever, and sometimes they're not, and you just kind of have to take the punches, but
it's a lot of not.
Yeah.
And did you find it a challenge to sell for a basketball team that isn't that good? So the Brooklyn Nets, clearly, unfortunately, I'm sorry, Annie, one of the worst teams in the NBA, if we're being honest. However, the New York Liberty, they just won a championship and they are good. And so can you talk about the nuance and even the approach to selling for these different entities with completely different outputs?
Yeah, 100%. So I'll start off with like a fun fact, I feel like. So just 2 seasons ago, Barclays Center has 17,000 seats.
Right.
So we have our lower level, and then it's sometimes a little different than most arenas. Our 100 level is connected to the lower level, so there's no extra like escalator to get to it. But that whole lower level was the only thing open for the New York Liberty, and we just this past season opened up the upper bowl. And when like a few weeks ago when I was done there, we were almost completely sold out. So I think it's really interesting to see just the vast difference of obviously what we see in the NBA versus in the W. But I think that's another thing that really attracted me and was definitely a challenge that our managers brought up to us, like from before day one. A lot of my coworkers and teammates, they wanted to pursue professional sports sales, and they were like, we were kind of told, hey, like, you're not going to learn to sell. You're really going to learn to sell here. Mm-hmm. Like, there is a lot of hope. There's a lot of opportunity for this team. And one of just the main goals for BSE is to create that generational fandom. And, you know, Brooklyn's a pretty new team to Brooklyn. So we got a lot of folks over in New Jersey that might have been fans before. And it's hard to carry people over, not only just to Manhattan, but to Brooklyn. But there's definitely a difference. But I think the way that you position the product and you really personalize it to them, it's definitely a case-by-case basis. But it is really exciting to see the growth of the W, and hopefully the Nets get some good draft picks. I know they've got a few, but
I will tell you that, you know, my company, SBRnet, and you know firsthand because you've worked on my data, the numbers for the WNBA year over year are just fabulous. In fact, I can tell you that, you know, year over year, they had the largest single gain in total fans of any sport. Now, look, the NFL still has the most fans. I mean, it's 176,000 or 176 million fans, you know, nationwide. But, you know, we're talking about, you know, from point A to point B, the WNBA has the largest increase. It's very impressive what's going on and all of that. Annie, we're getting kind of up to, you know, as long as we like to keep people. But, you know, now that you're about to, you know, get your next job in sports, tell us what you're looking for and tell us what you're hoping for. And then the other part of it I want to add in, long runway on this one, is, you know, is there anything, you know, that you wish you would have learned maybe at school that you didn't, that you maybe could go back and add to your skills?
Yeah, I love that question. So yeah, right now I am working on just like myself. It's been a while since I've done that, but working on some passion products and for what looks next ahead. I loved my experience. I am super lucky to have gotten a glimpse of sales, obviously at the NBA level. But I think for what's next for me, I definitely am leaning more towards back to the partnership side of things.
Okay.
Kind of just that more like creativeness that you do have.
Relationship, the more long-term relationship development, more, you know, more, let's say, problem solving, things like that.
Yeah, I think the long-term relationship is something that is just a little bit more up my alley. I think it's really interesting on the sales side of thing, how there's a sales and a service side component to it.
Sure.
I loved servicing my clients and kind of just seeing that in what people do within the partnership or sponsorship realm. Is something that's a little more like exciting and seems to be what I'm gravitating towards, but really just working on myself and networking to see what's ahead.
Seems like a natural progression though, from where you are now to where you'd like to be. It does seem very natural.
I love the dream, but I'm looking to, I think, just maybe stay a little closer to home. I don't know, just a lot with the family. I have 2 nieces and a nephew on the way. So I'm excited to get some time with the family.
Are you back in Langhorne?
Yeah, right now I am.
Got it.
I'm glad that you're taking.
You were all up in the Eagles when Eagles Mania was taking place?
Yeah, so I was still in New York for that.
Okay.
And I got to go to the parade back in 2017, and I think that was enough parading for me.
Yeah, I went to one when I was a kid. Yeah.
But I did get to participate in the New York Liberty Parade, and that was really exciting to experience that in New York. But yeah,
that stuff's fun.
Love my Eagles.
So here, I want to kind of wrap it up, but I want to ask you. So, Dr. Tim Koba invites you to speak in his class. Dr. G invites you to speak in her class.
It's going to happen. I'm letting you know right now.
So you're going to be with a number of younger people, the younger version of Annie Borovskiy. What are you going to tell them, Annie, about the sports business? And what advice are you going to impart upon them?
Yeah, I've definitely learned a lot, and I still have a lot to learn. I think my biggest piece of advice to anyone, regardless of what year you are in school, if you're looking to change your idea or your mind on things, is that it's never too late to start or get your start. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people put maybe too much pressure right at the end of school or too much pressure right at the beginning, and burnout is real. I just like to tell people, like, ask as many questions, but also don't be afraid to explore and be curious within whatever you're doing. Like, when I committed to live in New York, I had no idea where I was going to be. I had no idea what was going to go on. I had no idea.
Where did you live, just out of curiosity?
Good question. I lived a few places. I was commuting from home for a little bit because I had my New York City apartment fiasco experience. Everyone has theirs.
I've heard.
But I lived in Manhattan, super close to the Empire State Building, right on, what was that, 34th?
Which I guess as Midtown gets.
Yeah, yep. Right there. So I lived the dream. I still have my apartment, and I'm still making trips up to New York.
Sure.
But I think really just see where opportunities take you.
Sure.
Say yes to everything in moderation.
Dr. G, didn't somebody said that on an earlier show? They said, say yes. Yeah. You know what? And Annie, you've just reinforced that particular position.
Thank you. Yeah. It's worked for me a bunch. Like, I don't think I would have gotten anywhere where I am right now without just saying yes. Like, when Tim Koba was like, hey, do you want to do this case study competition? I could have just said, I'm not interested in that, or what is that? But I was like, you know what? This is a challenge. I've never done it. Why not? This could be great. And it was great. And it led me to...
You never know who you're going to meet. You never know what you're going to do. You never know what's going to happen. And you know what? Life's a box of chocolates. You just never know what you're going to get. Sorry, Forrest Gump, but I just feel that way.
Love that movie.
Annie, Dr. G and I want to thank you for coming on My First Job in Sports today. I thought this was a really enjoyable conversation. And, I think you brought a lot to the show. And Dr. G and I want to thank you very much.
Thank you both. It was so great getting to chat. And Dr. G, I'm looking forward to hopefully meeting in person.
Absolutely.
And Neil, thank you as always. I know we have yet to meet in person, but it'll come soon.
Thank you for tuning in to My First Job in Sports. This show has been produced by Brad Mabey. Back episodes can be found at sportsmarketanalytics.com, on the SBRnet YouTube channel, or all major podcast platforms. If you like the show, give us a great review. Also, you can follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, or X.